imagine if an SJW got a hold of this stream right now? Oh my, we would be blacklisted.
We're canceled. We're canceled everywhere.
Of course, yeah. If Kenobi's a jumbled mess like that, a lot of fans are. It's not going to be good.
The guy with the guy in the cloak with the hood, you know,
Again, a lot of people, a lot of people are really mad about that, man. I forgot to add myself to the stream. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Late Night. I want to say what's up to the chat real quick. Junk 3PO's in here. Said this title, it was a little strongly worded. The title was a little strongly worded. I'm not going to lie. But to be honest with you guys, I mean, I don't really know what else to say about kind of the situation that we're in with Kenobi. So I said what came from the heart. I said what came from the heart. Holocron Jedi, what's going on? Star Wars Mansplain, good to see you, my friend. John Graber, I'm too old to stay up this late. You can be all right. You can be all right. T. Davidson, you mean Disney fans? No, man. I'm going to be honest with you. Buddy, it's been, dude, this whole thing has been such an interesting experiment in, like, what Star Wars fans actually want from their TV shows. And I'm going to be honest with you, man. Like, it's kind of tough to separate who's who right now and who wants what. But that's something we're going to be going into a little bit later. Brian is in here. What's up, Brian? Rock and roll? Hoochie coo down. I don't know what that means, but thanks. Eli Martin's in here. What's up, brother? I'm going to put a little bit of tunes on. I have to jive to a little bit of music, man. I need some tunes if I'm going to sit here and talk about some Star Wars. I can do the Ewok celebration. Ronnie says, okay. What's up, Jolo? How's it going? Rissman is a machine. Yeah, he's not even here. So I don't know what you want to say. What's up, Frag? How you doing, brother? How do I join? Oh my god, I didn't send him a freaking invite. That's why he's not here. I'm still bad at YouTube after all this time. After all this time. Okay, there we go. Maybe we can get this guy in here now. Maybe it's a solo stream. Don't hold your breath. All right. We'll get one of those soon. Don't worry. I need to do some more solo streams. I'll be honest with you guys, though. It's tough sometimes. It's tough to be like just sitting there staring at a camera and you're reacting to chat, obviously, and talking to the people. But my God, sometimes it is tough to do a solo stream. But I look forward to doing some more in the coming future. I'm gonna pick a day. I think I'm gonna pick a day. I'm gonna do a solo stream on that day every week, and just try to make it a regular thing. But when you got guys like, Drunk 3PO taking up 3 hours on a Saturday, it's tough. It can be tough.
Hello, I'm here.
I finally found him.
Dude, it was a marathon on EVN, dude. We went 3.5 hours.
I don't know how you do it.
Dude.
Jay will do that on a Saturday afternoon casually. That's kind of crazy, man.
No, man. A lot of fun. Great to see you. Great to be here. Thank you.
So we are back. We're back in the arena. It's late night. Is that music too loud?
Good for me.
I'll bump that down to like 12. I got old man ears. I get irritated when I'm trying to listen and I hear other things too much. Okay.
You have the nonsense in your ears too.
It's not nonsense. Get off my ass. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about, I made a very bold statement with my YouTube title. Star Wars fans don't give a shit about Andor. And I'm going to be honest with you. There's a part of me that thinks I'm wrong, but the large portion of my brain is telling me that it's just true. It's just true.
So it's so interesting. I guess I don't pay attention to your thumbnails, clickbait, whatever.
Oh no, that's fine. I spend bunch of time making those. I put
No,
you in
they always look pretty. I don't pay attention to the lettering, right? But we were just talking as we were ending the pop-ins on EBN about Andor, and my proposition, right? My question was, is this a series that brings new fans into the franchise? Right?
Yeah, there's no way.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Thrawn was on and a few other folks, and I had this experience out and about, right? People are enjoying it, right? They're, you know, Thrawn had some, you know, very specific examples of folks who are Gilroy shills. People love Gilroy.
How are you a Gilroy shill? The guys, we're 7 episodes into a series.
No, from before, right? From the Bourne stuff and from Michael Clayton, and they're like, yeah, we like what he does. And so there are some folks. I don't think it's like buku folks. There are some folks who apparently have checked this series out specifically because they're big fans of what Gilroy does, and I found that interesting. Because for me, I don't think this is a series that brings folks into the franchise.
Well, I look back to, and I have to make a point really quick to the chat. I apologize. I was told last stream I paid nowhere near enough attention to the chat, and I apologize. A lot of times when you get people in here, I'm interested in the conversation, and I'm listening to what people have to say.
You don't do good chat management.
No, I'm not. I'm so bad at chat management. So I apologize. I'm going to get you guys in here. I want to hear your voice, your opinion on what we're talking about, and we're gonna grab you. We're gonna bring you in and get your voices heard. So I do apologize for that. But anyways, I'm sorry. I totally lost track of where I was. Essentially, yeah. So there are people who like Tony Gilroy's writing. That doesn't get the Star Wars fan base excited. You know what I mean? Like, there's no hype around this. And my question, really, what I'm trying to figure out in my mind when I look at who's watching the show and why, or who doesn't care about it, or who does care about it, is it just because it's Cassian Andor and nobody gives a shit about Cassian Andor? Or is it because this is a product of repeated abuse from essentially a franchise owner who really doesn't listen to or give a shit about the fans who have constantly told them this is what we want?
I think it's malaise based upon the last 2 products they've given us, right? Book of Boba Fett followed by Kenobi, right? This series, I know everyone's going to be like, oh no, here he goes again, right? But this series, Andor, be clear, is the best thing Disney Star Wars has given us on Disney Plus. It's far superior to The Mandalorian, right? But the difference is
how is it far superior to Mandalorian?
I'm going there. The difference is this is not a fun series to watch.
It is for me.
Well, but you're atypical, right? The Mandalorian's appeal.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm atypical too, right? But the difference is the Mandalorian's appeal is it's jazzy, right? It's fun. You know, there's a cuteness factor there. They're out on missions. Things are happening. It's very colorful, right? You know, there's some intrigue, but it's not hugely important to what they're doing, right? On this series, Andor, we're in a very gray period in the Star Wars galaxy, right? It's not fun, right? There isn't anything going on here that's like, okay, it's cute, you know, it's enjoyable. It's this series is about, as much as I hate to admit it, as the Empire stan that I am, right? This series is about the rise of rebellion. So I go back to my whole thing about, we had this conversation with Book of Boba Fett. Call it Tales from Tatooine, right? Don't call it Book of Boba Fett.
That's
right?
so dumb.
Fuck you.
Who the hell is going to watch Tales from Tatooine?
Listen to what I'm saying, Linda.
The only reason we ever... Did you just call me Linda?
I did. Linda, honey, listen.
The only reason we ever went to Tatooine is because Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker was there. Nobody ever wanted to go back there.
All I'm saying is it wasn't for me. It wasn't the Book of Boba Fett. It was a story around what was going on Tatooine, and Boba Fett was involved, right? In this particular case, it's called Andor, and Tony Gilroy said, "Well, we thought about talking about, the education of Cassian Andor, and we bantied around, story titles." For me, I'm like, why didn't you just call it Rise of the Rebellion? Right,
because this is a sickness that is pervasive in modern media, right? It can't be, let's name a story. It's got to be character. We're going to base it off one character, right? We can't just tell a story. I mean, so Rogue One is a perfect example of how they did that well. Where
perfectly
they were
titled, by the way.
Yeah, perfectly titled. It was like there was no character, no nothing. It was just, this is just a story. And then when it takes off and they're like, call sign Rogue One, you go, hey, that's the name of the movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know, there's just, to me, there's this sickness right now in Hollywood where everything has to be, and I think Marvel's mostly to blame, everything has to be an origin story or a prequel. Any majorly successful movie or mass marketed movie has to be a singular, so like an origin story, a villain story, or a comic book character. That's all they can do. I mean, even Mando is prey to that. I don't know. It's hard to explain. How do you explain that?
No, I'm with you, right? And it's so funny because I'm thinking about it like, well, you can't have an origin story or a prequel unless there was an actual story, right? Because that all presupposes you can't have something that comes before unless there was something after that we're used to, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm kind of like,
well, there's nothing original.
Yeah, and it's like what do you call it? The Education of Cassian Andor. It's a terrible title, by the way, but Rise of the Rebellion, right?
Can you imagine if they called it that? The Education of Cassian Andor?
Here's what I would have called it: Star Wars: The Dark Times, right? Because that's where we're at in this era.
People would have flipped the fuck out, though, and excuse my French there on that one, because now you're referencing a line from Kenobi, and we're not seeing. What we're seeing is a very myopic view of Cassian Andor. We're not seeing the whole thing. It's going to move there eventually, and I think that's something that the show has done well, is that they have started at a very small portion of the Empire, which is basically paid Goonies, and then as the show progresses, they're bringing in more and more and more and more and more Empire. So I like that portion of it.
But the Kenobi time frame, the Rebels time frame, this is all the dark times. If you subscribe to the beauty of the Republic, right, and the high times, right, we're in the dark times right now. Whether it's but the point that it doesn't sound good is apropos, right? This is not a happy time, right? And I personally feel like, put the belays aside, right? This isn't a fun series to watch. Right, and so if it's not a fun series to watch, have they missed the boat? Right, they're telling the story Gilroy said they were going to tell. Right, yeah. It's not this whole no killer all filler, no filler all killer. It's not the Robert Rodriguez nonsense. Gilroy's
Don't bring that shit up to me.
No, what I'm telling you is Gilroy was like, I've got this shit. Right, I've got 1,500. I know what I'm going to do. Right, it's going to be dark. It's going to be dreary. It's going to be spy focused. It's going to be amazing from a story perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a happy watch.
Well, I'm okay with that. I don't mind a not happy watch. In fact, some of my favorite movies in the world are not happy watches. I mean, look at Saving Private Ryan. People are like, it's a very uplifting story. No, nobody's ever said that in the history of film review ever. But it's a beautiful story.
But from Star Wars, is this the first not happy watch for 12 episodes? Right, I get you that this is not.
We've never had an unhappy watch in a Star Wars show. We've had an unhappy watch in a movie, in Rogue One. We've never had a show though, and that's why I
Yeah.
think it's hitting so weird with the fan base. Is that
Same.
people are like, well, people don't know what to think. I think that's what's going on. They're like, well, it's not shit, but I hate it.
But it's not pew pew. It's not lightsabers flashing. It's
Well, there's
not
a pew pew.
But the pew pew has not been pervasive.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? That's why I say it's very different than the last two series. And then if you extend it to the third one for Mando, this is like totally not any of that. And it's not hitting.
Paul Blunt with 279 Canadian. I made a new little meme for you, actually. You want to watch it? There was a new clip that came out about they actually made a movie about Rian Johnson's interview. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
Knew how we got there and believed in it, I think, and it felt honest to all of us. That was always the big litmus test: is does this feel honest and true to these characters we grew up with? And so because of that, I don't know, it never felt like, oh, are we actually doing this? It felt like, yeah, if this is true, then this is true, and this makes sense. And so, yeah.
I don't even know. There's so much to unpack there. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to
Thank you
say.
so much for the 279. Really appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. You're keeping the lights on over here. Do you have any idea how much these LEDs cost? You just got me for the year, so I really appreciate that. Thank you. Andor, A Handmaid's Tale. Have you ever watched the show? Handmaid's Tale? Have you watched it?
I've never watched it.
I know nothing about it. My wife watches it religiously. I think that's why she hates me. She's like, patriarchy, what?
Maybe not the only reason. It's okay.
So, anyways, so there's this really interesting conversation going around as to whether or not Andor is actually well written. That can be subjective, right? I mean, what's well written to you? Okay, so we talked with Valiant Renegade about the show and how they don't have a hook each episode as compared to House of the Dragon, right? Where there's always this kind of microcosm of the story that's going on in each episode, compared to Andor, where it really is, when we say slow burn, I mean, they lit that fucking candle on the left side, and on 12, we're going to find out what goes on at the other end. You got to stick that thing through. So is that a well-written show? Or is it a poorly written show, but we're just so used to shit like Boba Fett and Kenobi that we're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I mean, for me personally, I cannot dispute the fact that Andor is a really well-written show, right? The problem with it is, did they write a story that anyone cares about? Right? It's not that it's not well written, right? You might go back to and think about either Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi and say people cared about the show, but it wasn't well written, right? In this particular case, it's well written, but no one seems to care about the show.
Yeah, Tony Gilroy should have written Kenobi.
100%.
Hands down.
100%.
Who wrote Joby Harold?
Joby Harold, yeah.
Yeah, somebody needs to go throw that guy in a Sarlacc pit, dude.
And so for me, I don't find it poorly written, right? No, it was not me, Ronnie. I find it sad that folks haven't given it a chance.
Yeah, I do too, and that's the pervasive problem with the show, right? The problem with the show isn't that it's bad. That's not the problem with the show, and that's what's driving me nuts, and that's what's so heartbreaking about the whole thing. Is it's not that bad. To a lot of people, it's boring as hell. And I've seen some real assholes on Twitter saying that if you don't like the show, it's because your IQ is too low. Like, get off of your fucking high horse for 2 seconds, okay? That's not the problem. The problem is that we've been literally fucking abused by these people for so long that people are like, all right, well, this isn't Kenobi. It's not a Luke show. It's not any of the legacy characters. Thank God, might I add. And I just don't care. Why am I going to watch this? I don't care. And a lot of people, even, hardcore fans, don't have the same feelings that we do about Rogue One. While I accept it as like this was a Disney movie that did Star Wars well, a lot of people don't feel that way. And so when you make a story about Cassian Andor, it's like double down. I really don't give a shit. So I don't know. It's tough. I think this was a bad move by Disney in putting a very competent writer in a show that really didn't have a lot of draw, and then putting an incompetent writer in charge of a show that everyone was watching. You know what I mean?
I do. And for me, I go back to...
We're digging it too. Chill out, man.
Is it poorly sequenced? In other words, they should... This show has been in production for so long now, right? Would it have been a different story if they would have released the series much closer to Rogue One being the thing, right? There's so much moss has grown, right? And they've done so many other series now. What, 3 at least, right? Between then and now, before they finally put this out, right? And people are so beat down, right, on what happened in the last couple of series, and now here we go. They're like, oh no, I can't do this again, right? Even Melvin's saying the same thing, right? It's I don't know that Jedi and Sith are required, right? But
but people would eat that up they would eat that booty like groceries.
We waited too long.
I'm writing my book right now. First thing I did. This is going to take place in the expanded universe, and it's going to be with Luke. But what do you do in the prologue? You put the height of the Jedi. And what are they fighting? They're fighting a dude with the red lightsaber. How do you want to get people invested in a Star Wars story? You start with that.
I'm with you, right? But where this time period, where we're at in this series, if you agree they should be telling a story at this moment, this is not the moment of Jedi and Sith, right? This is the moment of no more Jedi, right? And 2 Sith, right?
It's the dark times, like you're saying, yeah.
Yes. And so you have to subscribe to the fact that this is the right time frame to tell the story. And part of the reason why I think some folks have had a barrier to entry on this series is because they don't feel like it's the right time, right? And because we know right now, no Jedi, right? Not out in the open.
But dude, if there was ever a time when Jedi were needed in Star Wars, it's now.
But not only are they needed now, but look what's happening. Mon Mothma's husband is mocking them. It's like, oh, I'm dressing like a Jedi. It's in vogue now. There's no Jedi. Look at me. I'm dressing like one. Right? Have you noticed that? The way he looks, he's like, Jedi. But I like their look. I got their drip on. Right? That's Perrin. Right? It's so intricate in how you have to decompose the story they're telling. Right, and that's not for everyone's jam.
Well, and that's the thing. So this is where you have to separate and compartmentalize your love for Star Wars, right? So this is one of my favorite ones. This show is an EU novel, and I love it for that. Plus, the production quality is awesome. Totally true. Guess what? A lot of Star Wars fans, even like hardcore Star Wars fans, haven't read the EU books. They're not used to, like, if you've read Thrawn books, this feels like a walk in the park, dude. It really does. This feels like an absolute walk in the park compared to a Thrawn novel, because you're memorizing 97 different Chiss names in an EU book, right? And that is not easy to do, man. And they have 3 parts to their names. So, yeah, this is like a breeze for me. But the bottom line is that doesn't appeal to the mass fan base, right? You're not bringing the people in that you need to. And so I wind up in this little argument inside my brain where people say, this isn't where Star Wars needs to go. And I say, this is exactly where Star Wars needs to go. You're just doing it with the wrong material.
But we realized, right, which I didn't know until I did my homework. Oh God. Right. But Mon Mothma's daughter has now been canonized from Legends, right? That was her daughter from then.
What do you mean, right? Mon Mothma was canonized?
No, her daughter.
Oh, her daughter.
Her daughter existed before in Legends, and now they've brought her forward and they've canonized her.
Guess who gives a shit about that? 1% of the Star Wars fan base.
But I'm with you, right? But it goes back to the point you just made around source material, and they're not, they don't respect it or whatever. Maybe it's too little, too late. Okay, fine, right? But this series has a care to all that stuff that has seemed very careless in what we saw just now in either Kenobi or Book of Boba Fett.
When you put the show out, this show comes out when you've made it. So when Star Wars is in a good place and you've got a hit movie that Star Wars fans are all about, and you're waiting for the next one, and you're like, oh my God, I can't wait for that. That's when this show comes out. And you're like, oh, I love all the subtle references that we have to the Rakatan Empire. And oh my God, Mon Mothma's daughter. Too little, too late. That's where I'm at right now. And so the problem for me is that I love the show. I think it's good. I think it's well written. The actors are doing effing amazing. No one gives a shit because they haven't done the legwork up to this point for this to be accepted as a good show. The way I would compare it to is a YouTuber who has no followers and makes the most amazing content in the world, right? Awesome content. But guess what? No one gives a shit. Why? It's not in the public eye. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Well, I'm just happy that
it's a sucky truth, but it's the bottom line. I mean, that's just what happens.
I'm with you. I'm just happy they're making a second season regardless.
So here's my question to you. And this is a very, very tough question. And this may take an hour to answer. We have already slated now multiple shows. We have Tales of the Jedi coming out very soon.
Next
we have Ahsoka, Mando season 3 coming. Apparently Thrawn's going to make a debut at some point. What is the road to healing this franchise? Because they dug a hole so deep that people literally are just walking around it. People don't want to fall in the hole anymore. I was already in the hole. So I'm like, I'm going to have to stick around until I can figure out how to get out of it. But a lot of people are just walking around the hole. They're like, I don't want to be fucking involved in that. No. What's the road to healing? In your mind, what is going to fix this? And if it can't be fixed, what do I do? Do I sell all my shit? Do I sell the thousands of dollars of stuff in my room and just quit and walk away?
No, I think you don't do that for sure, right? But for me, again, personally, I think we have so much great content coming. And I include Andor in this, by the way, but put that to the side, right? But as we move into next year, we've got Bad Batch Season 2. We've got Mando Season 3. We've got Ahsoka. We've got Skeleton Crew. Right, so we have a mix of things coming that I think are going to hit, right, and they're going to be more of that pulp Star Wars that people really do like, right? And then I think
Ahsoka is going to be written like Andor?
No.
Themed thematically like Andor? I mean,
no.
So what do you mean hit?
Because Dave Filoni is in charge of Ahsoka. And I don't think Dave Filoni is like, I hate Tony Gilroy or whatever. But the story he's telling in Ahsoka is a very different story than Tony Gilroy is telling in Andor. So I wouldn't expect them to be written the same way, right? I hope to God Jon Favreau is not writing Ahsoka, because I wasn't a fan of Jon Favreau writing.
Boy, that guy fell out of the good graces of Star Wars fans. Like,
I think we really have a good thing coming in 2023. In regards to the property and what we're getting, right? And then 2024 is going to be season 2 of Andor, right? Yeah. So they're intermixing these things, right? And I for me, it's a good idea.
I want to touch on this really quick because episode 7 had the clones, the phase 2 clones. Remember, they were walking down the street and somebody threw a rock and they turn around. They look like real evil guys. That rubbed me the wrong way for some reason.
That particular scene, right? It's very important because they're phase 2 clones. There was a Dark Times officer was there. That's what they call that guy.
Yeah, this is post Clone Wars, right?
Yeah. And they're marching along or whatever, and Clem was there, and Andor's adopted father, was there trying to calm folks down, right? But it didn't work out.
You're the guy who always has like the inside answer. Do we have a confirmed voice who voiced those clones? Because it didn't sound like Tim to me.
It wasn't Tim.
Yeah. Didn't sound like Tim.
I don't know. But
failure.
But that whole, and then the next thing we saw again was his legs hanging. It's very much hanging people again. Right?
Boy, Disney's all about hanging people. Kind of weird, huh?
All of a sudden, right? But I think the comment that came was about finally seeing stormtroopers, in that intermediate, Clea was walking, there were stormtroopers there, in Coruscant, right? And my whole thing about people's fixation on stormtroopers is stormtroopers were not a common occurrence.
Yeah, that was not the regular army for the Empire. No, they were the shock troopers. They were the big bads.
As much as we like to, joke about they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and
well, they can't though. That's the funny part.
But regardless, right? They were, on your point, they were the Empire's. I mean, they were elite, right? They were elite troopers, right? So the fact that you see stormtroopers in the last episode kind of out and about is a reinforcement of the Empire saying, all right, we got to get on this shit.
Yeah,
right?
We're done messing around.
We need to be on it. And we're so used to seeing stormtroopers because of the original trilogy, right? The Star Destroyers, the Death Star, those things were constructed to move stormtroopers around, right, to other places to make invasions and do shows of force, right?
All right, we got to hit the super chat. I need to come out with a better way to do super chats because we get running off and I leave it on there and then I'm like,
go.
All right, Mr. Mansplain for $9.99. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. I'm with X-Wing. Too little, too late.
What is that? Oh, is it a shrugging person? Can't see. What's on
That's
the end?
That's the Mega Chad, bro.
Oh, no, on the right. What's at the end of late?
Oh, it's a shrug.
It's a shrugging.
It's like, sorry, bro. Yeah, too little, too late, man. And I can't help but to agree that, like, yeah, there has been so much that Disney has done. So, like, the way I think about it is like a stock. Okay, you start with Star Wars. You buy it for $4 billion. What they have done is they went down and then up, and then they went down, and then they started to go up, and then they plummeted to the ground, and then as they started to come up again, they fired Gina Carano, and it went rock bottom with a lot of people.
Whether we like the answer I'm going to give you now or not, right? They bought Star Wars for $4 billion. They made $4 billion plus on the sequels, right? They have already realized the return on their investment. So everything else that happens is gravy.
It's not gravy.
It is gravy from the
No, they
business's
listened to the fucking
perspective.
Twitter mob, and we were like, bro, that is bullshit, and everybody flipped the fuck out, and they went,
Doesn't matter.
Shit.
yeah,
Doesn't-
you made
it
a
doesn't
boo-boo.
matter. Doesn't matter. They've already made the $4 billion back. I'm not saying they don't want to make more than $4 billion. All I'm saying is, all right, fine, whatever.
All right, I'm way behind on chat. All right, we got to catch up with some of this stuff. I apologize. I want a Luthen show. Hell yeah, we should definitely get a Luthen show. Dude.
Do we think Luthen's on the up and up? Do we think he's what he appears to be?
Yeah, no, I think Luthen's 100% in. He wouldn't be sitting there listening and laughing, genuinely laughing and enjoying what was going on unless he was 100% in it. No, I think he's pure for sure. Murray says, I don't see why fans don't like the show. It's the creation of the rebellion plus the Empire taking the front seat. What the fuck? Again, it's not the show. That's why this whole thing is just a complete anomaly when it comes to a Star Wars project, is that it's good. That's the
It would
bottom
be better
line.
if the
It's
show
good.
was shit, right? It would be much better. I can't believe I'm saying
Oh, it'd
this.
be trending on Twitter, and there'd be
If the
hashtags
show,
everywhere.
If the show was shit, right? Everyone would be like, "Oh, the show is shit," and no one's watching it.
Yeah.
Now everyone's like, "I can't really shit on the show. It's good, but no one's watching it."
and here's the thing here too. So I took the liberty of going and pulling up Google Trends and taking a look at really what is going on with Andor. So the blue line is Andor. She-Hulk is going to be the red, House of the Dragon in the gold, and then Rings of Power in green. So you can see, I mean, nothing doing. It came out, and then we got a little bit of spike. That's it. That was it. Nobody cares about the show. Nobody cares. At least by Google's metrics. Nobody cares about the show. And when you really think about the way the world operates in media and how you spread the word and get excited about things, it makes sense when you see that big spike of House of the Dragon where everybody's talking about it. How do you get stuff out? How do you get stuff out? How do you get people excited about it? You get on Twitter. You get on social media. You talk to your friends about it. That's how you get people excited about shows. And nobody's talking about Andor, dude. If I went to a high school today and walked in and was like, hey, pick a random junior and let me ask him about Andor. He's like, who? Andor. Who? You go back to 1977, ask him, who's Luke Skywalker? He said, that is my fucking hero. So I don't know. It's tough, man.
Hey, like I said, there's
Not
still going to be a
throw,
second.
sell.
Still going to be a second season, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
does it matter? Does it not matter? I mean, it's one of those things where they want. That's what I was saying earlier today, right? Oh Jesus Christ! We want committed folks, right? From a writing and a directing perspective, we want people who are all in, right? Because there doesn't appear to be enough of those folks that are willing to cast lots with Disney Star Wars, right? So whether it's Gilroy, whether it's Padson, whether it's Bryce Dallas Howard, whether it's Filoni, whether it's Favreau, right? We have to capitalize on those folks and make sure that they continue to put out high quality content, right? And whether or not Andor is the show that everyone wanted, it's a high quality show. Right, so keep doing it. Right, I would much rather them put out another season of Andor than ever to have a She-Hulk season 2. Fuck me. Right, and it's the same company, right? And it's just a different mindset. It's a different set of management. So I'm like,
How's that going?
Yes, please. Let's go.
So Devil's Advocate says nothing can be lower than the prequels, episode 1 and 2.
I liked Attack.
What the hell is even that?
Any thoughts on that?
I'm a huge Attack of the Clones fan, right?
Great
you know
movie.
me, I'm not a Phantom Menace fan. Right? I'm just not. Right? But I don't the Attack of the Clones hate, I'm not there for it. Right? For me.
Small Time says perhaps Andor is a course correction for Disney Star Wars. Now, this is a really big point for me because I think this is the best direction they can go. If it's an overcorrection, then I'm happy because when they course correct a little bit, we'll get a serious story with other shows. But before that, I mean, you remember Book of Boba Fett when he picks up the fucking droid and is like, I am Boba Fett. Like, what is happening?
This was right after remember, but even worse than that, this was after the whole Remy Ratatouille kitchen scene, right? In order to pick him up, he chased him all around the kitchen while the Grievous droid was doing this. And
don't forget the Grievous droid. Yeah.
Yeah. That whole thing was so awful.
And I apologize to anybody that when they saw that was like, oh my God, it's like General Grievous. That's sick. I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
I know.
I literally vomited in my mouth a little bit. And then it got progressively worse, actually. I think I might have gotten like Lyme disease when Kenobi came out. Anyways, I want them to take the franchise seriously because a lot of people did. And the problem was, I feel like
this is the issue. They're taking the franchise so seriously with Andor.
It's an overcorrection. In my brain. And while I love it and I adore it, I feel like if they found a middle ground between that and then like, God, I don't know. The other two are so far on the other end of the spectrum. I don't think that like middle ground works there. You know what I mean, though? I mean, like take it a little bit seriously. And you have to remember that so many of your fans and your fan base are now adults. People who grew up with the prequels, and not to mention the people who grew up with the original trilogy. And the original trilogy had humor in it, but it wasn't a fucking comedy. And they're like, well, comedy's always in it. Look at C-3PO. And I'm like, look at what they did with B2 Emo in Andor. That's the same type of humor, right? It's not meant to be funny.
B2 was sad, right? The funniest this is so bad. The funniest thing in Andor for me has been the KX droid choking him, right? About the whole hang. He said hang, and he's choking him to death, right? I'm like, and I kind of chuckled for a moment on that, and then I thought to myself, is this really the funniest thing that's happened before in this series? I'm like, no wonder people don't like it, right? No wonder it's a sad series, right? This is the funniest thing, is getting choked out by a droid that I was like, really?
Well, and that's where, so for me, you know, when I look back at the original trilogy, where did the humor come from? Who was the comic relief? It was always the droids, right? It didn't come from the characters. I mean, maybe very, very slightly with stuff between Han and Leia. Maybe, but it always came from the droids. And so for me, in Rogue One, where did the humor come from? Didn't come from Cassian and Jyn. It came from K2SO. So I love that because it's this dichotomy between humans and droids. I'm like, K2SO worked perfectly. And I feel like that's why a lot of people liked Rogue One, was because it maintained that serious between humans. There's got to be humor in it because of Star Wars, but it comes from the droids.
Yes,
and
but
they kind of did that with B2, but
B2 just seemed like a droid they didn't care enough to keep working, who Andor just left behind. Right? The poor droid, he's like, can I go too? Please don't leave me here. Right? Can I, what's going on? And he can't even speak anymore, right? And I'm like, they even made this droid sidekick sad. Right? I'm like,
yeah, you're not kidding. Yeah, he's kind of well, I mean, his name's B2 Emo.
but it's a depressing. It's like you have your family pet, right? It's like, my cat, my old gal here. I would never leave her behind, but he left him behind.
That's
right.
why I think B2 is going to wind up being K2SO, because he has that same self-deprecating kind of humor.
Listen, if I showed back, this is going to sound so insensitive, right? But if I showed back home and Marv was like, nah, man, I'm here to stay or whatever, ironically, Cassian's actions made her radicalized, fine. But I've been like, all right, bitch, I'm taking the dog and I'm leaving. You're good. You've got it. I'm taking my brother and I'm out of here. Right? And he didn't even he's left B2 there.
Well, Mansplain, thank you again so much for the $9.99. Again, I grew up with this as it was happening. I'm old, but still, this is odd. Not Star Wars to me, anyway. And you sound a lot like Mark Hamill when he was talking about the sequel trilogy. I get it. Why don't we take a refresher? Let's take a break. Let's find the main villain of the sequel trilogy. What do you think about that?
Please don't go this way.
I can show you the world.
I love it.
It was great.
Yeah.
That was from the deleted scenes of Rise of Skywalker.
I can show
That was amazing.
you the world.
We got way behind on chat. I apologize again. I'm trying to keep up, but man, you guys are ripping through here. Level of humor like that, though, it's subtle and not marvelly. Yeah, so I look back to what was Thor: Love and Thunder. I watched that on the plane.
Oh, I know it's your favorite. You loved it.
I don't think I would say that. I don't think I would classify that as my favorite. And what's funny is now it's starting to bleed into Star Wars now, because they're talking about having Taika make a Star Wars movie. And before Love and Thunder, I was totally on board. And then I watched Love and Thunder and I'm like, please don't give this fucking guy a movie. Please don't. The problem is that he got so much traction behind him. And everybody's like, oh my God, what was Ragnarok? It was so good. It was so great. It was awesome. Yeah, dude, do another one. And then he did Thor: Love and Thunder, and it was like, what the fuck was that? It was every 2 seconds was like an offbeat, not that funny joke. It was too much. It was too much. And if you try to put that formula into Star Wars, again, there is subtle humor. You have to be subtle about it. It's intelligent humor. It's what I would call it is British humor. It's almost British humor, right? Because you can watch a British comedy show and have no idea what's going on and not laugh the whole time. You think it's a serious show, but if you're not listening to what they're saying, you're never going to catch it. But if you're listening and thinking about it, you're like, this is the funniest shit I've ever seen in my life. So that's the kind of humor that you have to have in Star Wars.
I'm with you. I love Jojo Rabbit. I loved Ragnarok. Thor: Love and Thunder to me was another, thumbing the nose, right? In the same vein as She-Hulk, right? Which is, we overcorrected. We parodied our own franchise, thinking that it could be funny and that people would appreciate it, and then the fans were like, I'm not here to be a laughingstock or to watch a laughingstock.
I like the comedy breaks, just not the whole movie.
I'm here to watch a superhero franchise.
Yeah.
Right? And when I feel like I've gotten punked, right, for investing my time, it makes me angry. right? And that's what I don't understand that, right? But I
You spend
don't.
2 hours listening to shitty gag jokes, and you're like, "What the fuck was that?"
I mean, I love the goats, but I mean, we hear the goats, doing their thing so many times, right? So
You
I'm
haven't
like,
owned goats, have you? Because it was not. If you've owned goats, it's not a funny thing. You're like, yeah, it's annoying as shit.
I'm happy to say I've never owned a goat.
Okay, well,
Right, but again, it's like, I don't know what they were going for, right? They're trying to capitalize on the legacy, and if they're not careful, the legacy will crumble, right? It doesn't last forever. The goal is always to make new fans. Keep your fan base invested, but make sure that what you're doing attracts new folks.
yeah.
Right? And sometimes I watch this stuff and I'm like, who are you attracting? Who are you attracting with this?
Somebody brought up Free Guy. Like, what about Free Guy? That's over there. That is that's a Ryan Reynolds thing. That's what Ryan Reynolds does. And I mean, look at Deadpool. Every fucking line is a joke, but it works. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a joke, but it's smart. It's smart humor. The humor that we got in Thor: Love and Thunder was fucking dumb. It was dumb humor. I'm sorry if I offend anybody with that, but that was dumb fucking humor.
And I saw Nikki say something that I wholeheartedly agree with, right, in regards to Black Adam. And I said this, I think I said it last night on Justin's stream, right? Black Adam is the best superhero movie I have seen in recent memory. It's better than Black Widow. It's better than, it's better than Morbius, of course, right? But it's better than, for me,
Morbius.
Multiverse of Madness, right? It's certainly better than Thor: Love and Thunder. It can't be better than Spider-Man No Way Home, but that's a cheat, right? That movie was a cheat. I'm not diminishing it, but I'm saying...
That was tugging at the heartstrings is what that was.
Black Adam, for the Justice Society and what they did, and Pierce Brosnan and The Rock was invested in that role, and then the Henry Cavill thing was just a cherry on top.
Spoiler alert.
Well, it's not a spoiler anymore, right? I mean, who's
Not a
living
Marvel
under
guy.
a rock now, right? But all I'm saying is, 100% on Black Adam. It's not a good movie. But it was so much fun to watch it, right? And that's what we're missing, right? We're missing that whole, what? I'm here. This is an experience. We're here together. We're loving it. I've got my huge tub of popcorn
a new story, right? I have no idea who Black Adam is. If I went and go watch that movie, that's an original story to me because I don't know Black Adam. So.
Same. He had a relationship with Shazam, and they played that up great in the movie. And so for me, I'm like, okay, done. Right? You asked me who is Dr. Fate, so but it's not relevant, right? The way that they did all of that, I'm like, yes, please, more. Excellent. Well done.
Okay. We got 5 minutes. I want you to describe a path from right now to 2027. How do you fix Star Wars?
But it's a cheat for me, right? Because I think they're on a great path. But I think what they've been giving us on the original content, now that I've watched Andor and what's coming
chat,
next,
get in on this too. Chat, let me know.
next,
What do you think now to 2027? What shows would you want to see?
And
that
what's
would
coming
fix it
next
for you?
year? I'm completely content, right? I've always wanted, as you know,
You're content?
I am. I've always wanted a more Empire focused, what's all going on kind of a show, right? And I've gotten that in spades now. Even what we got a bit in Kenobi, now what we're getting in Andor, and what I think is going to go, continue going on, right? And then I know it's not the play anymore, right? We've had enough Death Stars, and they've all gone away, and so we have to continue to tell stories that are the post the Imperial era. So okay, fine. let's see what's going on. What's with Mando 3 and Skeleton Crew is an outlier, and of course, Ahsoka, given the opportunity, I'm a huge Rebels guy, right? So for me, I'm quite content on what we're going to be getting, at least over the next year on Disney Plus. I'm just really conflicted about the movies, right? Cinematic and what's happening there. But I think my thing is I don't find it to be as broken as you do, right? So it's hard for me to answer how do I fix it, because I'm quite content to continue to watch what I'm seeing, because even as bad as even as disappointing as Kenobi might have been, it wasn't as bad for me as She-Hulk, right? Giving a Marvel analogy. So let's keep going, right? Let's, Bad Batch. I'm a huge Bad Batch fan, right? So for me, I'm kind of like, yeah, it's pumping on now. Let's go.
I think I finally joined the train where I truly believe that this franchise is not going to be happy until there is a legitimate, and I sound like an American right now, a regime change. I think if there is a regime change, and I'm going to explain to you why. I think if there's a regime change and then they start putting out content that has the weightiness that Andor does. So the quality of storytelling, the impact of people actually dying for the love of God. I know it's Star Wars, but people actually dying in Star Wars. I think if you have a regime change, what that's going to do is it's going to clean the palette for Star Wars, right? So everybody's going to go, oh my God, new owner, right? Fresh car. Holy cow. We have a new look at Star Wars. And then they put out a show like Andor, except it's set in like the old Republic. And you have a bunch of Jedi killing the shit out of each other and fighting each other with freaking lightsabers and massive Jedi and Sith battles and stuff like that. I think that kicks over into a new era of Star Wars where fans who have sucked off the nipple of the expanded universe, or all the stuff that we've had to do to try to survive as Star Wars fans when we weren't getting content, I think it will reinvigorate them, and it will give them a lot to talk about, and that's going to pick up the fan base. It's going to get the people who have been, essentially in hiding, more or less. It's going to get them excited. I'm going to get excited, and we'll start talking about the shit again. We'll start hyping it up, and you're not going to tell me right now that a 15-year-old kid or a 14-year-old kid who sees 90 Sith and 90 Jedi fighting each other isn't going to be like, I want a fucking lightsaber yesterday. They will. With the way that modern CG and all that stuff is going on, dude, they are going to absolutely eat it up. Because I don't care who you are, what generation you're born in, boys always pick up sticks and try to beat each other with them. That's the bottom line. So if they see that, they're going to be excited. That is the way forward for Star Wars. That's my 2 cents.
So in your opinion, a successful Star Wars project always needs to include Jedi and Sith and lightsabers and the rest of it?
No, it's not what I said.
No, but a lot of what you said was a lot of Jedi and Sith fighting, and let's tell that story and let's see all it again. And haven't we already seen enough of that? Or you're saying there's still... Can
you name a movie where there's 90 Jedi and 90 Sith fighting each other?
Attack of the Clones?
There were 90 Sith fighting 90 Jedi in Attack of the Clones?
But there was a lot of Jedi fighting. Mm-hmm. Right, so I'm.
Isn't that your favorite Star Wars movie?
My favorite Star Wars movie is definitely not Attack of the Clones.
Empire. You know what I mean? Yeah. You love Attack of the Clones, right?
All I'm saying is I find it interesting, and I've said this also, right? we've talked about it, right? For me, in a successful Star Wars property, there's a few main things you need to have. You need to understand who's the good guy, who is the bad guy, and light and dark Force users seem to be an important part of the equation, right?
What I'm trying to say, and I'm gonna try to get this out like nice and smooth and easy because it's now 9:30. It's the cutoff time. What I'm trying to say is that Disney is attempting to grasp the multi-generational love for Star Wars. Okay, it's what they're trying to get. They want dads to love it. They want sons to love it. Grandsons to love it. Right. So, to me, the easiest way to do that is do what you do best, man. Star Wars. Give us Star Wars. Why is Saving Private Ryan one of the most beloved movies? Why are war movies some of the most highest rated movies that men ever watch? Why? And somebody's gonna get mad at me and say, you know, girls like Star Wars too. Of course they do. Of course they love Star Wars. Yes.
We know you're hugely misogynistic by now.
I'm massively misogynistic.
Nobody's watching the stream that doesn't understand why they're here.
I'm just saying, like, when you really look at it, who's watching this stuff, and then how did you get kids excited for the movie? What did George do? He made a war in the stars, and everybody's like, "Oh my god, that's sick." Who was in the line? It was young 7-year-old boys with lightsabers beating the shit out of each other. It's a hard fact of life. Like, boys like war until they grow up and they find out what it really is. But if you really want to, like, entice younger kids into Star Wars, make it a badass war movie, a Star War. What do young kids play? They play fucking Warzone on Call of Duty. What do? They kill the shit out of each other. Like, don't tell me that this new generation is different than any other generation. The difference was I had a stick and I was shooting at my buddy with the stick or a Red Ryder, and now they have freaking Call of Duty where they actually kill the shit out of each other. So yeah, make a Star War and have young men interested in it, and that's how you blow it up. And they are literally ignoring the fact of reality that young men enjoy violence. It's the bottom line.
What I hear you, right? But they also have to pick the appropriate time in the Star Wars timeline to tell the stories, right? And on your point, it either has to be really in the past, or potentially it has to be really in the future. Right, because at this point we seem to be stuck in this 5 to 10 year period, right, where it's either it's not okay or it's just after it wasn't okay, but yet
where's the old Republic?
That's what I'm saying, right? You have to either go really back, or you potentially have to go really forward to
go really back
into, you know, what you're trying to talk about. Otherwise, the stories they're telling don't fit into that narrative.
I saw my good friend Andrew for $5.01.
Yeah, it's not
new drinking game.
Yeah.
X-Wing takes a shot every time he tries to convince us that Star Wars is headed in the right direction.
That's why it's not worth reading.
Fucking nerd.
I love you. How was your golf game today, by the way? How'd you do? Did you do good? I thought you texted me that you didn't, but I could be mistaken. It is 9:35. It's too late for me. Rissman's like, it is almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Stop being a bitch.
Listen, I've been going for many more hours than you have. Well, you were on VacTube earlier, so I can't.
Yeah. No, I went VacTube and then I went Echo Base, and then here. Look, here's the deal. There's a lot to talk about, and I still don't feel like the conversation's over, man. I want them to do Old Republic, but I know they're not going to do it right, and so I'm like, fuck those guys. Don't touch the Old Republic. But I'm like, the only way you're going to make it successful is if you do it. So it's tough, man.
I will say I think it's hugely unlikely that we will see
Massively
any kind
unlikely.
of Sith Jedi interaction in Andor, right? I don't think it's beyond our own possibility that we will see Force users, right? And I think also, by the way, if we see Palpatine, I don't think we'll see Sith Lord Palpatine.
You'll see Chancellor Palpatine.
With red lightsaber ablaze or whatever. We would see Statesman Palpatine, right? Which is part of the reason why I think they're not going there.
Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, he's the president, right? Yeah. For whatever name you want to give.
That's where the Trump's America shit came out from.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah, they're gonna give him a comb over and blonde hair and the rest of it, right? But this is part of the reason why I think they'll give us Masameda or a stand-in, right? Because if people are always think of at this point Palpatine as Sith Lord Palpatine, and that's not the story that Gilroy is telling.
The only time he whipped his buddy out was right at the end. He didn't do that shit. Well, I mean, depends on if you like the EU or not. But anyway, okay. All right. That's it for the late night. Everybody, thank you so much for showing up tonight. Mansplain, thank you so much for all the donations tonight. I really appreciate it. And everybody, have fun. Relax. Things get tense here sometimes in the late night, but I hope you enjoy your night. Have a wonderful Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow night for Hangar Bay if anybody's going to be there.
Oh, you're really doing it this time?
I'm finally going to be there. No, we're revamping Hangar Bay. Yeah, we're doing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And John Graber is going to have to do it again.
Oh, Darth Weavin finally made it to a live stream. About time.
Not my fault, bro.
Whatever.
Everybody have a good night. Thank you so much for showing up. I appreciate it. And we will see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. For my co-host, Moff Rissman, thank you so much. My name is X-Wing, and we will see you on the next one.
Much love. Take care.